911. What is your emergency? Verity Calloway. My brothers. They killed everyone. Please help me. I am bleeding so much. They are trying to kill our whole family. Please send help to 427 Oak Ridge Road in Willowbrook. Please hurry.
Me 11 dispatcher. Stay on the line, honey. Help is coming. Can you tell me your name?
Verity. Verity Calloway. I think I am going to die. My throat. There is so much blood. The most dangerous place in America is not a dark alley in Detroit. It is not a gang-infested neighborhood in Chicago. It is not even a prison yard filled with convicted killers. The most dangerous place in America is your own home, with your own family. The people who share your last name, your dinner table, and your deepest secrets can become your greatest threat. Do you really know the person sleeping in the room next to yours? Have you ever noticed a family member becoming obsessed with dark content online? Have you ever dismissed concerning behavior because they are family? Have you ever ignored gut feelings about someone you love because blood is supposed to be thicker than water? Do you know what your children are watching on their computers after you go to bed? Have you ever wondered if that quiet teenager in your house is planning something terrible? These are the questions that Marina and Ronald Calloway never asked. These are the red flags they never recognized. These are the warning signs they dismissed because the threat was coming from inside their own home. The Calloway parents made that exact mistake, and it cost them everything. Their two oldest sons did not just betray their trust, they planned a massacre that would destroy their entire bloodline. By the end of this story, you will know the 3 warning signs that could save your family's life. You will understand how isolation can transform a home into a hunting ground. You will learn to recognize when family loyalty becomes family genocide. In the quiet town of Willowbrook, nestled between endless cornfields and century-old oak trees, the Calloway family lived in complete isolation from the outside world. 7 children, 2 parents, 1 house, and absolutely no connection to their community. Ronald Calloway was a methodical information technology consultant who controlled every aspect of his family's life. Marina Calloway was a soft-spoken woman who followed her husband's lead without question. Their children were homeschooled, sheltered, and completely cut off from normal teenage experiences. If you learn from other people's tragedies to protect your own family, hit that subscribe button right now, because this story could save your life. What happened to the Calloway family can happen to anyone, anywhere, at any time. The warning signs were there, the red flags were waving, but nobody was paying attention. From the outside, the Calloway family appeared to be everything American parents dream of creating. Ronald Calloway was a 42-year-old information technology consultant who worked from his home office, managing network security for small businesses across 3 counties. He was methodical, punctual, and obsessed with maintaining order in every aspect of his life. Ronald believed that the modern world was corrupt, filled with dangerous influences that would poison his children's minds. He saw himself as a protector, a father who would shield his family from the moral decay of society. Marina Calloway was 38 years old, a former elementary school teacher who had given up her career to become a full-time mother and wife. She was quiet, obedient, and completely devoted to supporting her husband's vision for their family. Marina never questioned Ronald's decisions, never challenged his authority, and never spoke up when his control became suffocating. She believed that a good wife followed her husband's lead, even when that lead took them down a dangerous path. Their 7 children were the crown jewels of this carefully constructed world. Damien, 18 years old, was brilliant, articulate, and seemed destined for greatness. Lucian, 16, was equally intelligent but more reserved, always following his older brother's example. Verity, 13, was the only daughter among the older children, a gentle soul who loved reading and drawing. Leland, 12, was energetic and curious about the world beyond their property line. Orion, 7 years old, was the peacemaker of the family, always trying to make everyone happy. Beatrix, 5, was full of laughter and innocent joy. Baby Ivy, only 2 years old, represented pure innocence in a house that was slowly losing its light. To their few neighbors in Willowbrook, the Calloways seemed like a model family. They were polite during brief encounters, well-dressed, and apparently devoted to each other. Nobody knew that this perfection was actually a prison. Nobody realized that Ronald's protection had become control, Marina's devotion had become enablement, and the children's obedience had become fear. The dangerous truth was that the Calloway family had no real connection to the outside world. They had no friends, no extended family relationships, no community involvement, and no outside perspectives to challenge their increasingly isolated worldview. Ronald Calloway did not choose homeschooling to give his children a better education. He chose it to maintain absolute control over every piece of information that entered their minds. He created detailed lesson plans that focused on technical skills, religious instruction, and moral philosophy that aligned with his personal beliefs. There were no discussions about different perspectives, no exposure to conflicting ideas, and no opportunity for the children to develop independent thinking skills. The Callaway children never attended birthday parties, never joined sports teams, never participated in community events, and never formed friendships with children their own age. They never learned how to navigate social conflicts, never experienced the normal teenage rebellions that help young people develop their own identities, and never had trusted adults outside their family to confide in when problems arose. Marina supported this isolation because she believed it kept their children safe from drugs, violence, and sexual influences that she feared in public schools. She never considered that isolation itself could be dangerous. She never realized that children need exposure to different people and ideas to develop healthy social skills and moral reasoning abilities. The homeschool curriculum was rigorous in mathematics, science, and technology, but completely lacking in social studies, current events, and critical thinking skills. The children were educated but not prepared for the real world. They were intelligent but emotionally immature. They were knowledgeable about technical subjects but completely ignorant about human relationships and social dynamics. This isolation created a psychological pressure cooker effect inside the Callaway home. Normal teenage emotions like anger, frustration, and curiosity had no healthy outlets. The children could not talk to friends about their problems, could not seek advice from teachers or counselors, and could not escape the suffocating atmosphere of their home environment. Their only window to the outside world was through their computers and internet access. Ronald monitored their online activity during the day, but he went to bed early and had no idea what his children were doing on their devices late at night. The digital world became their secret escape, their hidden code playground, and eventually, their pathway to destruction. For Damien and Lucian, the internet was not just entertainment. It became their education about the world their father had tried to hide from them. They discovered violence, hatred, and darkness that their sheltered upbringing had never prepared them to understand or process in healthy ways. The first red flags began appearing when Damien turned 17 years old. He started staying awake until 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, claiming he was studying advanced programming techniques. Ronald was proud of his son's dedication to learning, never bothering to check what websites Damien was actually visiting during those late-night sessions. Lucian began following his older brother's schedule, staying up late and sleeping until noon. The two brothers started spending more and more time together, whispering in their shared bedroom, sharing private jokes that nobody else understood, and developing an us-against-them mentality toward the rest of their family. Marina noticed that Damien and Lucian were becoming distant from their younger siblings. They stopped participating in family game nights, stopped helping with household chores, and stopped showing affection toward Verity, Leland, Orion, Beatrix, and Ivy. When Marina mentioned this to Ronald, he dismissed her concerns, saying that teenage boys naturally grow apart from their younger siblings as they mature. The brothers started making cruel comments about their parents and younger siblings during family meals. They would mock Verity's drawings, criticize Leland's questions about the outside world, and show complete indifference toward the little ones who still looked up to them. Ronald interpreted this behavior as normal teenage attitude, never recognizing it as a sign of growing contempt and dehumanization. Small acts of cruelty began appearing throughout the house. The younger children's toys would be broken or hidden. Verity's art supplies would disappear. Leland would find disturbing images on his computer screen. When these incidents were reported to their parents, Damien and Lucian would deny involvement, and Ronald would dismiss the complaints as sibling rivalry. The most alarming warning sign was the complete emotional detachment that Damien and Lucian developed toward their family members. They stopped seeing their parents and siblings as real people with feelings, dreams, and rights. They began viewing them as obstacles to overcome, problems to solve, and eventually, targets to eliminate. If this family dynamic sounds familiar to you, if you recognize these warning signs in your own home, let me know in the comments below. You are not alone, and there are resources available to help before it is too late. While Ronald and Marina Callaway slept peacefully each night, believing their children were safe in their beds, Damien and Lucian were descending into a digital hell that would consume their souls and destroy their family. Their late-night internet sessions began innocently enough, with typical teenage curiosity about the world beyond their isolated home. But isolation has a way of amplifying every influence, and what started as curiosity quickly became an obsession with violence, death, and infamy. Damien discovered online forums dedicated to mass killers, school shooters, and family annihilators. These dark corners of the internet were filled with detailed discussions about famous murderers, their methods, their motivations, and their legacies. He spent hours reading manifestos, studying crime scene photographs, and analyzing the tactical mistakes that led to various killers being caught or killed before completing their missions. Lucian followed his older brother into these digital rabbit holes, and together they consumed hundreds of hours of content glorifying violence and celebrating those who had achieved notoriety through bloodshed. They read about the Columbine shooters, studied the techniques of serial killers, and became fascinated with family murder cases where children had killed their parents and siblings. The brothers discovered video games that simulated mass killing scenarios, watched documentaries that detailed famous massacres, and found online communities where like-minded individuals shared fantasies about committing acts of extreme violence. They learned about weapons, tactics, escape routes, and media manipulation strategies that successful killers had used to maximize their impact and ensure their place in history. Because they had no friends, no mentors, and no healthy social connections, Damien and Lucian had nobody to provide perspective on the content they were consuming. They had no voice of reason to challenge their growing fascination with violence, no moral compass outside their own twisted logic, and no reality check to pull them back from the edge of madness. Their parents remained completely oblivious to this transformation. Ronald assumed his sons were developing valuable computer skills that would serve them well in their future careers. Marina was simply grateful that the boys were quiet and not causing any obvious problems. Neither parent ever bothered to check their browsing history, monitor their online conversations, or pay attention to the subtle changes in their behavior and personality. The isolation that Ronald had created to protect his family became the perfect environment for radicalization. With no outside influences to balance the violent content they were consuming, no trusted adults to confide in about their dark thoughts, and no healthy outlets for their growing anger and resentment, the brothers began to see violence as the only solution to their problems. In January of 2015, exactly 6 months before the massacre, Damien made a chilling declaration to his younger brother. During one of their late-night conversations, he announced that he was tired of living in their prison of a home and proposed a solution that would give them both freedom and fame. He suggested that they kill their entire family and then embark on a cross-country killing spree that would make them legendary. Lucian was initially shocked by his brother's proposal, but Damien was persuasive, charismatic, and completely convinced of the righteousness of their cause. He argued that their parents were holding them back from achieving their true potential, that their younger siblings were nothing more than burdens and obstacles, and that society would remember them as heroes who had the courage to break free from the chains of conventional morality. Over the following weeks, Damien and Lucian began developing their plan with the same methodical precision that their father applied to his information technology projects. They created detailed timelines, backup strategies, and contingency plans for every possible scenario. They studied the layout of their house, identified the best routes between bedrooms, and calculated how long each phase of their operation would take to complete. The brothers began acquiring weapons through online purchases and local stores, always paying with cash and never buying multiple items from the same location. They purchased hunting knives, tactical equipment, and even basic recording devices that they planned to use to document their crimes for posterity. Each acquisition was carefully planned and executed to avoid detection by their parents or law enforcement. They rationalized their planned massacre by dehumanizing their family members and portraying themselves as victims who were simply fighting back against oppression. Damien convinced Lucian that their parents were tyrants who deserved to die for imprisoning them in isolation, and that their younger siblings were better off dead than living under Ronald's control. They began viewing their family not as people with feelings and rights, but as obstacles to overcome and problems to solve. The fame-seeking motivation became increasingly important as their planning progressed. They studied how other killers had achieved notoriety, analyzed what made certain cases memorable while others were forgotten, and developed strategies to ensure maximum media coverage of their crimes. They planned to record manifestos explaining their actions, document the massacre itself, and create a media package that would guarantee their place in criminal history. During the final months of planning, the brothers became increasingly excited about their upcoming liberation. They talked about the places they would go after killing their family, the additional people they would target during their cross-country spree, and the legacy they would leave behind. They began seeing themselves as dark heroes who would inspire others to break free from societal constraints and embrace their true nature. Their bond grew stronger as they shared this terrible secret, creating an us-against-the-world mentality that made them feel invincible and righteous. They developed code words for discussing their plan, created hidden storage areas for their weapons and equipment, and practiced their timing to ensure flawless execution. The recording equipment and manifesto creation became obsessions for both brothers. They spent hours writing and rewriting their explanations, filming multiple versions of their final statements, and perfecting the message they wanted to leave behind. They wanted the world to understand their motivations, admire their courage, and recognize their intelligence and planning abilities. During the final week before the massacre, the Calloway household seemed completely normal to outside observers, but family members who survived would later remember subtle changes that should have served as final warnings. Damien and Lucian became unusually calm and focused, no longer engaging in the petty arguments and complaints that had characterized their behavior for months. On Monday, July 20th, the family had what would be their last complete dinner together. Ronald discussed his latest work projects, Marina shared plans for the upcoming week, and the younger children talked about their studies and activities. Damien and Lucian participated in the conversation with unusual enthusiasm, asking questions about everyone's schedules and making comments that seemed caring but were actually intelligence gathering for their operation. Verity later remembered feeling uncomfortable during that dinner, sensing something different about her older brothers without being able to identify exactly what had changed. She noticed that Damien and Lucian kept looking at each other with expressions she could not interpret, sharing silent communications that excluded the rest of the family. Her instincts were screaming that something was wrong, but she had no context for understanding what she was sensing. On Tuesday and Wednesday, the brothers made their final preparations with methodical precision. They confirmed that all their weapons were properly positioned, verified their timeline once more, and conducted final rehearsals of their plan. They also completed their manifesto recordings, creating multiple copies that they planned to upload to various websites immediately after completing the massacre. Thursday brought the parents' final opportunity to prevent the tragedy, but they missed it completely. Marina noticed that both boys seemed unusually affectionate toward the younger children, spending time playing games and reading stories that they had ignored for months. Ronald observed that his sons appeared more mature and responsible, interpreting their behavior as evidence that his parenting methods were finally producing positive results. That evening, Damien approached his father with an unusual request. He asked for permission to stay up late to work on a special project with Lucian, claiming they wanted to create a surprise presentation about their family history. Ronald was pleased by this apparent interest in family values, and gave his blessing for the boys to stay awake as long as necessary to complete their work. Verity spent that final evening feeling increasingly anxious without understanding why. She found excuses to walk past her brother's room multiple times, hoping to catch a glimpse of what they were working on. Each time she passed their door, she heard intense whispering and occasional laughter that made her skin crawl. She considered telling her parents about her concerns but decided against it, not wanting to get her brothers in trouble for what might be nothing more than teenage secrecy. Hit that like button if you are starting to see the warning signs that everyone in the Calloway family missed during these crucial final days. The temperature in Willowbrook reached 92 degrees that Thursday, making it one of the hottest nights of the summer. The Calloway house retained the heat long after the sun went down, creating an oppressive atmosphere that seemed to press down on everyone inside. By 11 o'clock that evening, all the younger children were asleep in their beds, exhausted by the heat and their daily activities. Ronald and Marina retired to their bedroom at 11:30, following their usual routine of reading briefly before turning off the lights. They fell asleep quickly, completely unaware that their two oldest sons were wide awake in the next room, making final preparations for the most horrific night in Willowbrook's history. Damien and Lucian sat in their darkened bedroom, weapons laid out on Damien's desk, recording equipment positioned to capture their final statements. For several minutes, neither brother spoke, both fully aware that they were about to cross a line from which there would be no return. This was their last opportunity to abandon their plan, to choose a different path, to preserve their family and their own souls. At exactly 12:15 in the morning on Friday, July 24th, Damien looked at his younger brother and whispered the words that would seal their fate and destroy their family forever. He said simply, "It is time." Lucian nodded silently, picked up his knife, and followed his older brother out of their bedroom and into the hallway that would become a killing ground. The Calloway family massacre was about to begin. The Calloway house fell into a deadly silence as Damien and Lucian moved through the darkened hallways with calculated precision. Their bare feet made no sound on the hardwood floors as they approached their first target. The brothers had rehearsed this moment dozens of times, but the reality of holding actual weapons while their family slept peacefully just feet away created a psychological tension that neither had anticipated. Verity's bedroom door stood slightly open, as it always did because she was afraid of complete darkness. The 13-year-old girl was sleeping on her side, clutching a stuffed animal that she had owned since childhood. Damien paused in her doorway, knife in hand, staring at his sister's peaceful face. For a brief moment, his resolve wavered as he remembered teaching Verity to ride a bicycle when she was 5 years old. But Lucian whispered urgently behind him, reminding him of their plan and their promise to each other. Damien stepped into the room, approached his sister's bed, and committed the first act of violence that would destroy his family forever. Verity awakened to excruciating pain and the shocking realization that someone was attacking her in her own bedroom. Her survival instincts kicked in immediately, and despite her injuries, she managed to break free from her attacker and run toward the hallway, screaming for her parents to help her. The sound of Verity's cries awakened the entire household, completely destroying the brothers' plan for methodical, silent elimination of their family members. Ronald and Marina rushed from their bedroom, demanding to know what was happening, while the younger children began crying and calling out from their rooms. Chaos replaced the careful planning that Damien and Lucian had spent months perfecting. Their timeline collapsed, their strategy fell apart, and their dream of controlled, systematic execution became a nightmare of confusion and panic. The brothers realized that their plan was failing, but instead of stopping, they doubled down on violence, desperately trying to regain control of a situation that had become completely unpredictable. Verity's courage and quick thinking saved not only her own life, but potentially the lives of her younger siblings as well. Despite her injuries and terror, she continued moving through the house, avoiding her brothers and making enough noise to keep the entire family alert and mobile. Her refusal to become a silent victim disrupted the psychological dynamic that the killers needed to maintain their sense of power and control. The brothers' reaction to their failing plan revealed the fundamental weakness in their psychological preparation. They had fantasized about being methodical, powerful, and in complete control, but the reality of violence and resistance shattered their delusions of competence. They became increasingly frantic, desperate, and sloppy in their actions. While the specific details of what happened in each room of the Calloway house that night are too disturbing to describe in detail, the psychological impact on the surviving family members would last forever. The brothers succeeded in taking multiple lives, but their plan for total family annihilation failed because they had underestimated the courage of a 13-year-old girl who refused to die quietly. The silence that eventually fell over the house was not the silence of successful completion, but the silence of exhaustion, failure, and dawning realization of the magnitude of what had just occurred. At 2:37 in the morning, Verity Calloway made the phone call that would bring the full weight of law enforcement to her family's home and expose the horror that had just unfolded behind their closed doors. 911. What is your emergency? Verity, please help me. My brothers killed my family. I am hurt really bad. There is blood everywhere. Please send police and ambulances to 427 Oak Ridge Road in Willowbrook. Please hurry. 211 dispatcher. I am sending help right now. Are you safe? Are the people who hurt you still in the house?
Verity, I do not know where they are. I am hiding. Please hurry. I think I might die. There is so much blood.
The dispatcher kept Verity on the phone while coordinating the largest emergency response in Willowbrook's history. Police cars, ambulances, and fire trucks raced through the quiet streets of the small town, their sirens waking residents who had no idea that their community was about to become the center of national attention. Officers arrived at the Calloway home at 2:51 in the morning to find a scene that would haunt them for the rest of their careers. The house that had appeared so normal and peaceful from the outside had become a crime scene of unimaginable brutality. They found Verity collapsed near the front door, barely conscious but still breathing, clutching the phone she had used to call for help. The initial sweep of the house revealed the full scope of the tragedy. Multiple family members had been killed. The house showed signs of a violent struggle, and evidence of careful planning was scattered throughout several rooms. The crime scene was so extensive and complex that investigators had to call for backup from state and federal agencies. Word of the massacre spread through Willowbrook like wildfire. Neighbors who had waved politely to the Calloway family for years gathered in the street, trying to comprehend how such violence could have occurred in their quiet community. Many residents later admitted that they had never really known the family well, despite living near them for over a decade. By dawn, news media from across the country had descended on Willowbrook. The story of a family massacre committed by the family's own children captured national attention and sparked countless discussions about homeschooling, internet safety, and the warning signs of domestic violence. The Callaway name became synonymous with family betrayal and the hidden dangers that can exist behind closed doors. The investigation into the Callaway family massacre moved quickly due to overwhelming physical evidence and digital documentation that the perpetrators had created themselves. When police searched Damien and Lucian's bedroom, they discovered a treasure trove of incriminating material, including detailed plans, weapon purchases, and multiple video recordings in which the brothers explained their motivations and outlined their strategy. The manifesto videos were particularly chilling because they revealed the months of planning that had gone into the massacre and the complete lack of remorse that both brothers felt for their intended actions. In these recordings, Damien and Lucian appeared calm, rational, and thoroughly convinced that they were justified in killing their family members to achieve freedom and fame. Digital forensics experts uncovered the brothers' extensive online activity, revealing their consumption of violent content, their participation in forums glorifying mass killers, and their gradual radicalization over a 6-month period. This evidence painted a clear picture of how isolation and unrestricted internet access had transformed two intelligent teenagers into family annihilators. Damien and Lucian Callaway were arrested without resistance when police found them hiding in a neighbor's shed less than 12 hours after the massacre. Both brothers confessed immediately, showing no remorse for their actions and expressing disappointment that their plan had not been completed successfully. The trial proceedings were swift and decisive. Damien Callaway, as the primary planner and instigator, received multiple life sentences without the possibility of parole. Lucian Callaway, despite his younger age, was also sentenced to life in prison due to the premeditated nature of the crimes and his full participation in the planning and execution. The Willowbrook community began a long healing process that included memorial services for the victims, support groups for trauma survivors, and new initiatives to identify and help isolated families before tragedies occur. The Callaway house was eventually demolished, and the property was converted into a memorial park dedicated to preventing family violence through education and intervention. The Callaway family tragedy could have been prevented if the parents had recognized 3 critical warning signs that every family needs to understand. Warning sign number 1. Isolation amplification. When families completely cut themselves off from outside communities, schools, and social connections, they create environments where dangerous ideas can grow unchecked. Healthy families need external perspectives, trusted mentors, and community involvement to maintain balance. If your family has no meaningful connections outside your home, you are creating conditions where problems can escalate without anyone noticing or intervening. Warning sign number 2. Digital red flags. When family members, especially teenagers, spend excessive time consuming violent content online, become secretive about their internet activity, or show fascination with mass killers and violent crimes, immediate intervention is required. Parents must monitor digital consumption without being invasive, create open communication about online experiences, and seek professional help when concerning patterns emerge. Warning sign number 3. Sibling alliance against family. When siblings bond over shared secrets, develop us-against-them attitudes toward parents and other family members, or begin excluding themselves from normal family activities, these behaviors indicate dangerous relationship dynamics. Healthy sibling relationships do not involve plotting against other family members or creating hostile divisions within the household. Protecting your family requires 3 essential strategies. First, maintain open communication where every family member feels safe discussing concerns, fears, and observations about others in the household. Second, implement reasonable digital monitoring that balances privacy with safety, ensuring that concerning online behavior is identified and addressed quickly. Third, establish relationships with mental health professionals who can provide guidance when family dynamics become unhealthy or when individual family members show signs of psychological distress that require intervention. If this story taught you something that could protect someone you love, share it with them right now. The Callaway family's tragedy shows us that the most dangerous threats often come from inside our own homes, but these tragedies can be prevented when we recognize warning signs and take action. Subscribe to Criminal Mind Cortex for weekly true crime analysis that could save your life. Next week, we explore how a mother's intuition uncovered a plot that would have destroyed an entire neighborhood. Until then, stay vigilant, stay connected, and remember that family loyalty should never mean ignoring dangerous behavior.